Okay, Parshas Kedoshim, chapter 19, verse 1. Hashem spoke to Moshe, saying, Daber Kodat B'nai Israel, speak to the entire congregation. And you shall say to them, Kedoshim Tiyu, you shall be holy. Ki Kadosh Ani Adonai Elechem, because I am holy. I am Hashem your God, and I am holy. So that's the real question. How are we holy? So let's see what Rashi says here. Rashi says, Daber al kol hadas b'nei Israel, speak to the whole congregation of Israel. Melami chenemra parsha zu b'hakel. So this portion was said in a large gathering. This passage was said in a large gathering, not just by one person, but by a large gathering, because Nesharov Gufei Torah Tuyimba, because most of the Torah is dependent upon it. Hello, Seth. Okay, so we're starting Parshas Kedoshim today. So we have to get a little bit from both portions. This portion is said in a large gathering because most of the Torah is dependent upon it. So that's significant. Then it says, Kedoshim to you. What does it mean you shall be holy? Rashi tells us, Hayu Prushim min arayot u'min avera. It means to be separate from the sexuality and from sins, meaning to say, separate yourself from sexual sins. Wherever you see a person places fence around sexuality, that's where you find Kedusha, holiness. So Rashi says it means to separate from sexual sins. That's what holiness means. Isha zona v'chola, ani Hashem mekadeshem. Rashi gives us examples. Lo yechalel zaro, ani Hashem mekadesho. Kedoshim yiyu, isha zona v'chola. So that's what Rashi says this means. Okay. So verse number 3. Ish imo va'aviv tiro. You shall fear, a man shall fear his mother and his father. Ve'eshav sosai tishmoru. And my Shabbatot, my Shabbos you shall guard. Ani Hashem Elokechem, I'm Hashem your God. Let's see what Rashi says. Ish imo va'aviv tiro. Each man shall fear his father and his mother. Kol echad mikem tiru aviv imo. Each one of you shall fear his father and his mother. Zeu pshuto. This is the simple explanation. Midrasho enli al isha, enli al ish isha minayin. The Midrash says I only might realize that a man is obligated. Isha minayin. So why did a woman, how do we know that she's also commanded? It says, Kishomer Teru, Hare Kanshneim. It says, you shall fear, that's the plural. Imkain Lama Nemar Ish. Why does it say a man? Sha'ish Sipek Biadu La'aso, Savu Isha Rishus Acher Malah. A man always has the ability to do it, but a woman has she has to respond to her husband. So she doesn't have the same authority. There are certain halachos. Let's say the husband needs to move for parnasa, so he can force the wife to move. Judah, I think is that your screen saving? Because it looks like you're sleeping while driving. I just want to make sure you're okay. Okay, right away froze. You looked like you were sleeping while driving. Okay, fine. Imo v'aviv tirao. Your father and your mother you shall fear. Kaniktim Here the mother comes before the father, because it's very clear, because God, it's clear before God that a son will fear. Oh my God. Okay. Here, for this one, we praise the mother before the father, because it's very clear before God that a son will fear his father more than his mother. But when it comes to honoring, hiktim ava aim, it places the father before the mother. Because God knows that the son will naturally honor his mother more than his father, because she's always saying nice things to him. So therefore, the text counterintuitively says you have to fear your mother first and honor your father first. Does anybody find that the mother says nicer things to you than the father?
My son would disagree.
I think that a lot of people would disagree. I don't know. That's what the Rashi says. Of course, not Rashi. He's basing it on tomorrow. You shall guard my Shabbos. Why is the commandment to guard the Shabbos next to the commandment to honor your father? To tell you, even though you're commanded to honor your father, in Yomar L'chav, the father will say to you, the father will say to you, desecrate the Shabbos, don't listen to him. So you say, the same God that told me to honor my father told me to guard the Shabbos, and so therefore I'm not going to listen to him. Ani Hashem Elokechem, I am Hashem your God. You and your father are obligated to honor me. Therefore, don't listen to him to nullify my words. So now the Talmud, the Rashi tells us very specifically what does it mean to honor your father and mother. Ezu Mora. What does it mean to fear your father? It means lo yeshev b'mkomo v'lo yidaber b'mkomo. You know how to sit in his spot or speak in his place, or contradict him. So fearing your father, fearing your parents is something very specific. Ve'ezu kibud, what is honor? Malchil mashke, giving them food and drink. Malbish umanil, giving them clothes and shoes. Malchnes and motzi, helping them go in and out. You see from here, it never says you're commanded to love your father and mother. It says you're commanded to honor them. And this is irrelevant. A lot of times, people have sometimes very, very difficult relationships with their parents. Sometimes it's caused because the parents really caused a lot of trauma to the children. So then they want to know, what do we have to do? What's my halachic responsibility? Your halachic responsibility is to make sure your parents have food, clothing, and that they have shelter, food and clothing. That's literally your mitzvah.
One is not required to say Kaddish for parents who were abusive.
Well, there's no the saying the Kaddish.
I know Rashi doesn't come.
Yeah, no, because
but other.
There's no, the Kaddish started after Rashi. It was started like around the first time the Rashi was. But Kaddish, yeah, well, I guess certainly not well, you can honor your father and mother even after they're dead. So you can honor your father and mother even after they're dead. So Kaddish is one form of honoring your mother and father. But if your parents were very abusive to you, God forbid, and they were difficult to you, so then the minimum requirement to do is to make sure they have food. Now, you don't have to be there with them. You could just like hire somebody to do it for you, but you can't like let your parents starve to death or have them homeless on the street. That's your responsibility to clothe them and to feed them. Well, but I guess, yeah, if they're abusive to you, you don't have to say the Kaddish. That makes sense. It makes sense. Now with verse 4, Al tifnu el elim. Don't turn towards the false gods. Don't make molten images, gods of molten images. Ani Hashem Elokechem. I'm Hashem your God. What does it mean? Al tifnu el elim. Don't turn to other gods. L'avdam, to worship them. Elim lashon el, like al, expression of al, like kilohu chashuv. He's not worth anything. He's a non-entity. Ve'elohim hasecha, do not make molten images. Tchilasan elilimheim. At first, they are Elohim, but if you keep turning to them, in the end, you turn them into a god. At first, they're nothing, but if you keep turning to them, you'll turn them into a god. You can't even make these idols for others, and others cannot make them from you. And if you want to suggest that maybe it means you can't make them for yourselves, but other people can make them for you. So you can't make an idol for somebody else. Let's say you want to be in the idol making business as a prophet. A lot of Jews sell Christmas trees. You see, I've seen a lot of Jews selling Christmas trees on the streets of New York. You ever see that? It's a common thing. Everybody's got to make a living. So Christmas tree is not an idolatry, but a graven image that you can't do. Yeah. And if you're going to make a korban shlamim, a sacrificial peace offering to God, l'ritzonchem tizbechu. You shall slaughter in a way that you find it pleasing to God. What does that mean? Lo nemra parsha zu. This passage was only stated this passage was basically being taught to teach us a law that when you slaughter something, it has to be done with the condition to eat it within this amount of time that you're allowed to. It's not to tell us how long you have to eat the shlamim. We already know that it's 2 days with 1 night in between, but rather it's to tell us that you can only slaughter it with the right intent, with the intent to eat it in the proper manner. On the day you slaughter, you can eat it. You can also eat it the next day. Oh wait, I skipped the rest of the Rashi. At first, when you slaughter, it has to be amanas nachas ruach, to make it pleasing to God. Should be for God's will. That if you can't have improper thoughts when you bring the carbon has to be brought 100% with the right intent. Word sonchem. Rashi says, in pimento. Appeasement. Zelafi pshuto. Rabbatzenu amdu mikan misasek bekachim shepasal shetzach shiskaveishchot. That if the rabbis learned from here, if somebody slaughtered the animal without intent, it just like he was playing with his knife and ended up slaughtering it, it's disqualified. You need to have the intent. with the sacrificial food, the whole concept is the intent. The verse says, on the day you slaughter, you shall eat, it shall be eaten, and the next day, and whatever is left over till day 3 has to be burnt. Rashi says, when you slaughter it, you have to slaughter with the intent to only eat it in the proper amount of time. But if you don't have that, if you have the improper intent, the intent to eat it beyond the permitted time, then we're going to see what the prohibition is called. If you intend to eat it on the shlishi, on the 3rd day, pigol, it's called pigol. Lo yeratzeh, will not be an appeasement offering. So Rashi says, so this is the prohibition of pigol, but Rashi says, it can't be that your intent here was off because you intended to eat it on the 3rd day, which was beyond the time that you're allowed. It can't be. It already is stated, it had already stated this idea that you have to eat in the proper time. So therefore, since it can't be referring to eating something in the proper time, it refers to if somebody, when he slaughters it, has in mind to eat this food outside of the proper place. Actually, a carbon shlomim could be in anywhere in Jerusalem. So Rashi seems a little inexact here. So therefore, so I might think you're liable for the severe penalty for eating it. So if a person eats it beyond the proper place, he has in mind to eat it in Tel Aviv, even though he's slaughtering in the temple. So he's not going to get kares, but it is prohibited.
Yeah, in English it actually says very specifically outside the walls of Jerusalem.
Right, but
so that's what machshevet chutz mikomo means.
Yeah, I read mikomo as mikdash, which obviously that's why I said it didn't make sense. Okay, but now I see it says mikomo. So if you eat it outside of Jerusalem, when you slaughter it, you intend to eat it outside of Jerusalem. That's the prohibition. Even if you end up eating it in Jerusalem, since the whole purpose of a sacrifice is intent, if the intent is wrong, even if the deed is correct, the action is a sinful action. Okay. Verse 8. And the one who eats it will bear his sin. He has desecrated the holy space or the holy thing of God, and that soul will be cut off from its people. She says, the one who eats it will bear his sin. One who eats the meat that had expired. He's not going to be liable for kares in the case of somebody who slaughters it with the intent to eat it outside of the place of Jerusalem. This is talking about a case. This is no longer talking about the wrong intent. This is talking about somebody who slaughters somebody who eats it after it's expired. That's what we're saying gets kares. Track the creases learned it from Xera Shema.
Who eats it on the 3rd day?
Nobody's supposed to, but if you do eat it on the 3rd day,
that's what I'm saying. If you eat it on the 3rd
then
day,
you're going to get kares.
So for something that you've tried to do to repent, you can actually wind up getting kares. Is that medactic that if you do it wrong, you're going to get kares?
Also,
seems pretty nerve-wracking to sort of go through all those.
But also if the Kohen who's slaughtering it has in mind to eat it beyond the second day, that's also kares penalty.
That would be
Correct.
only for the Kohen. So basically, like there's also a shogeg, which is that either you didn't know that you're not allowed to eat on the third day, or that you didn't know that it was the third day. You ate so much meat on the first day that you fell asleep and slept through 24 hours, with wine and everything else that's involved. And there could be a shogeg, right? Like it's
No, it's a good, right.
And what would the penalty be for if it was a shogeg then?
a chatas.
Bring a chatas. I lost my chain of thought. Okay. Well, I lost what I was going to say. Okay.
In Kritos, isn't that the rule that the chatas only counts for a shogeg of kares?
Yeah, and chataso ba elal shegaso. So it's called lav zedono kares shegagaso chatas. Any prohibition where if you do it intentionally, you get kares. If you do it accidentally, you bring a sin offering. And there are two positive commandments, which if you don't do, you get kares. Do you know what those are?
The positive commandments, matzah?
There are two positive commandments. If you don't do them, you get kares. You're close with matzah, very, very close. But that was one of them, very close. Carbon Pesach, which last time I checked, nobody does that. Nobody does the Pesach anymore today. Last time I checked.
No, that's not true. The Samaritans do it.
I've been there, but they don't.
They do it.
But they're not bringing.
They're not Jewish.
They're not bringing their.
Well,
I'm just saying. Okay, leave them aside. Leave them aside. They first of all, they don't. It's not called the Carbon Pesach. They do their own thing. They bring a carbon around the Pesach season, and they're definitely not Jewish. They were importing their wives from Ukraine. They ran out of women to marry because but I did go to their city, and they make the hummus.
Did you see the exhibition at the Museum of the Mount?
About the Samaritans?
Yeah.
No, I didn't see that.
You should see it before it goes.
Yeah. I saw their space. I went to their space and saw it in the Shomron. I saw the Shomronim.
So what was the other one? The Carbon Pesach?
And the other one is, let's see if Baruch remembers. Do you know the two positive commandments? And if you don't do them, Baruch, you get kares. Remember what they are? They are Carbon Pesach and yes, exactly right, Seth. Bris Milah, exactly right. Circumcision. Okay. He's on fire today, Seth. He really is. So, okay, now the next verse, chapter 19, verse 9. Perfect. We have the farmer here. As when you harvest your harvest, do not end off the corner of your field to cut it. The gleanings of your harvest, do not gather up. So this is the idea, is that I guess if you take a big bundle and then one or two stalks falls out of the bundle, you have to let it be for the poor person. I always used to think of this law in the following manner. Today, when you go to a vending machine, then you use a credit card. When I was growing up, you had to have exact change, or you had to have change and the dollar bill. So I always think that, like, if you put money in the vending machine, leave it behind for the poor people. I see them sticking their fingers in the vending machines to try and get some money. So you have to leave those gleanings behind. That's what I think.
Unfortunately, everybody looks in those, and when they find the money in there these days, they take them.
Okay, fine.
No, but I like.
If you're in a poor area, I'm saying.
It's a nice concept.
Yeah, because you just leave it there, and then somebody gets it, it like makes their day.
It definitely makes somebody's day whoever finds it.
Yeah, makes their day. Okay, so then. Hold on. Okay. What does it say in the Rashi? You have to leave a corner over in the field. How big does the corner have to be? How big does the corner have to be?
And then shiur.
Right. This is how we start off our davening every morning. These are certain things which have no measure. What are those things which have no measure? One of them is the peah, the corner of the field. You can make a corner that's minuscule or a corner that's maxuscule. I don't know if there's a word. You can make a corner of infinite size. Okay. She tells us, these are the stalks that left over from the harvesting. One or two. If one or two are left over, you have to leave them. But if it's three, you can. That's not gleanings, and you could take that. Today we have the charity called Leket in Israel, which does this. It goes into the fields and it collects millions of pounds of produce and gives it to the people who are in need of food. Do another. Your vineyard you shall not glean. And the parrot, what's the parrot in modern Hebrew, Reb Baruch? Parrot is considered, Rashi tells us, these are the gargarei anavim, anosharim b'shas b'tzira. These are the little seeds of the grapes that remained behind when you were harvesting it. I don't know if that seed's not really a good word. What do you say?
No, I just have a question. Why the
Those are the
Torah?
baby grape. The
Why does
baby
the
grapes.
Torah repeat this verse twice? And then in Emor it says the same exact thing. What's the purpose of repeating it twice?
Okay, so let's look here. Rashi, usually when there's a pasuk that's repeated twice, Rashi tells us why it's repeated. So Rashi here doesn't say it, but what's the pasuk in Emor? Let's see.
It's
Chapter what?
Chaf Gimel, Chaf Gimel, Chaf Bet. It's slightly changed. It's it's plural.
Oh, here. So
And
let's
then
see.
like sword.
Rashi tells us. We go to the Rashi in Parshas Emor. This is what Rashi does. Rashi in Parshas Emor tells us. Chazar v'shana. Why does it have to say this pasuk twice? As Seth asked.
Okay.
He says it twice. Lavor aleim b'shnei lavim. Tell us that if you do this, if you don't leave behind the gleanings, the corner of the field, in violation of two prohibitions. Amar Rabbi Avdimi, Rabbi Yosef, Mara Akasav with name Be'emtza Aragayim, Pesach Vatzeres, Mikan Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur Mikan. So the first answer was because tell us you get two prohibitions. A second related answer is why is the Torah placing this verse in between the festivals, Pesach and Shavuos on one side, and Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur on the other side? It's to teach you that whoever gives the gleanings, the forgotten field, and the corners to the poor man properly, it's to tell you that whoever gives the gleanings properly to the poor person, we look at you as though you built a temple and you brought his sacrifices in it. So it's specifically telling us that if you bring it, it's going to be worthy and make the holidays enhanced. The Rambam says something similar. He says somebody goes into the holidays and doesn't give charity to the poor person, and he has a big, beautiful feast for himself. That's not called the Simcha of Yom Tov. That's called the simcha of your belly. That's called the simcha of your belly.
Can I add
Okay.
something, please, Rabbi?
Yeah. Sure, yeah.
Um,
Somebody told me they're gonna be 2 minutes late, so, okay, yeah.
there's- the love in our parsha is 100%, but it seems in Emor that there's also like almost like a se, which is that you should leave it for the poor, because a lot of people, I think Rabbi Austin talked about it, the rich person is not allowed to actually hand the ani, the leket, because that's an embarrassment, and you're not allowed to embarrass somebody in public. They actually
A
have to
very
give
good
it,
point.
they have
It's
to
a
leave
very-
it for them to collect. So it's
a-
almost like another aseh,
But it does say you shall leave it for the poor person, but that's after the vineyard. It keeps out in Emor, it takes out the verses having to do with the vineyard. Or it doesn't include the verses having to do with the vineyard.
So maybe
Yeah.
that's even more in terms of the relationship, meaning a rich person, I'm a recovering alcoholic. A rich person might say, I'm not going to give you grapes. You're going to make wine out of them, and you're going to get drunk, and I'm not interested, right? Like it's.
Yeah, Shikoch, yeah, it's a good point. Well, let me stop the recording. I want to ask everybody,